Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Town Social. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, we're finally back to live some honest, hard-hitting opinions and strap ourselves in for the roller coaster that is Huddersfield Town. In a week where Samuel L. Jackson was spotted at DeSandro, we are witnessing something equally implausible. A team berated, bemoaned, and predicted by most at the start of the season to finish lower half of the table. We now find ourselves in sixth within the promised land of the playoffs, and some of us are even daring to dream of another trip to Wembley. However, despite everything seemingly come together on the pitch, the opposite could be said off it, with Big Phil gone AWOL, Dino back in the saddle, and talk of a potential new owner on the near horizon. Here to try and dissect it all are myself, Nick Barlow, Ian Kilroy, Gaz Kay, Stephen Downs, and Matt Gabriele. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great to be back. Let's get straight down to business and talk about the Reading game. Reading 3, Huddersfield 4, crazy game, really crazy first half. Some questionable defence for most of the goals. It's great to see Town still practicing social distancing for Reading's corner for the third goal, leaving one of the most dangerous men from set pieces completely unmarked. But in all seriousness, it showed real good determination, grit, steel to come back from a goal down again and then to be pegged back twice and still go on to win the game. That's got to be really promising, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I saw lots of social media posts at halftime saying, wow, what an exciting game. Isn't this fantastic? I have to be honest, I was absolutely hopping mad. The defending for those three goals were absolutely disgraceful. And not what we've really seen, in fairness. A centre-back pairing of Lees and Pearson generally are rock solid. But they got pulled out all over the place, playing a flat back four, exposed their weaknesses, which obviously is a bit of pace. Pieper had gone absolutely mental in the first half. He didn't want to be in his own half, did he? And he kept leaving poor Matty Pearson exposed. So, the three goals we gave away were really disappointing. But that was completely countered, I guess, by the three goals we scored. They were three great goals for one. And once, that Danny Ward actually now he's starting to look like a footballer again. I commented to my son before the game about how fit he looks. I think that first season back, injuries clearly blighted him, and he had a bit of a crisis of confidence. But he looks like a different bloke and a different player now. And in an away game, when you score 4 goals, you expect to win. And I think overall it was 3 good points, and we're starting to see, in my opinion, now in that team, the kind of spirit and fight that we had when, whisper it quietly, when David Wagner was here, that, they're a team that seem to think they never know when they're beaten. And, fingers crossed, we come off the back of that into 2 tough games and take some more points. But one thing the Reading game did do was it catapulted us to the top of the form table over the last 10 games. So you don't get there by accident, do you? Carlos is doing a good job at the minute.
I think from my point of view, like you said, that it was disappointing the amount of goals that we let in, and over the previous couple of weeks we've been good, to be honest, on the defensive side of things. I think I was surprised that we were quite free flowing attacking wise, as much as what we were, to be fair. But I think whilst the frailties were worrying, I think overall you've got to look at the form that we've had, and we've been pretty good. So more than good enough. I think Reading were very poor, though. They only had, the chances that they created, we sort of gifted them. If we'd have defended at the level that we had done in the previous couple of games, then I don't think Reading would have scored 3 goals. I think they deserve to be near the bottom from the standard that they were playing. And like I say, one of the confidence things that I go into with every game now is that the Lee Nichols. I mean, he comes for every ball that's chucked in the box. He has no he doesn't back out of jumps. He's commanding. Yes, he could probably distribute a little quicker, but to be honest, from a goalkeeping point of view, he's spot on. I think, I know we'll probably go on to talk about sort of players of the season so far, but he's certainly up there, if not the best. So great win. Let's continue the momentum going forward. But yeah, there's always things to work on, and I think people now are appreciating what Carlos does tactically, and he's finally being able to bring that out, albeit with, not the most talented bunch of players. But I think that's what makes our story so great this season.
One thing with Lee Nichols is that it's like printing money in it, putting some money in him to get a yellow card in 90 minutes.
But yeah, I think the without looking at the like utter chaos, what was obviously the first half, like you can take as many positives and negatives out of it being 3-3, I guess, at half time. But I think ultimately, because of the frustrations of some other, especially home games, a couple of times this season, shows that there is a bit of, when there's a bit of freedom, I think, and flexibility in our attacking play, we can create and we can score goals. Which, even though we're in such a strong position in the league and having such good results, you almost look back and think, oh, if we'd have had this bit of freedom, like when we had like the last half an hour or so against Blackpool, that game, and then this Reading game, you do look back and think, oh, I wonder if we could have rolled the dice a bit more. But it was good to see Town score 4, have a striker bag a hat trick. You do come away now and thinking, I guess in a good way, back 3 or back 4. Like I don't know what I'd pick now as like my go-to starting 11 for Friday night and things like that. But that's a good thing that we can be flexible and we've got those players there. We seem to have a stronger bench. Carlos is clearly learning from last year with in-game management, because at half-time you could have easily seen it ending up 6-6. But something changed somewhere. There was a bit of discipline put into some of the players, especially like defensively and things. So clearly there's a bit of nous and knowledge coming into it out of experience. And I think having seen Pieper back on the team sheet does always excite me, because you don't get many right backs playing with a free role. Yeah, he just goes wherever he wants and can cause absolute like chaos down that right hand side, which brings positive from our point of view. Obviously, we can be a bit susceptible at the back, but ultimately, I think coming away from a 4-3 win, because we've come out on the right side of it, you can only kind of see good things on that Reading game, and it'll if there's ever a time to be confident going into a run of games where, like, I've never fancied against Stoke, but I think we're in a good position. It was a good result. We need to be putting teams away who are down at the bottom of the table. If we do think, could we sustain some towards the top 6, then we're in good a position as any. So why not? So it was good to see us get 4 goals, get a win. Granted, we're going to have a couple of games where we ship a few goals. I think that's inevitable with the players. Some of the players that we've got, and if they all have an off day at once, we know we might lack a bit of pace if Colwell isn't playing. But Reading game as a whole, as a one-off game, you've got to see it as a positive and a great 3 points really, like away from home. I've seen the stat today about the away run that we're on at the minute. So I guess we just got to keep it up and keep knowing that we can score goals. And as a fan, it's kind of nice. Whereas it's been a long time where if Town have got 1-0 down, you could pack up and go home. But recently, and plenty of times this season, we've turned going down early to bagging 3-4 goals. So, I couldn't really knock it on Saturday.
It's a weird one. I don't know how much actually you can take from the Reading game on its own, because you can lose that game. You can lose that game very easily with the amount of chances we gifted away. And you're delighted to come out of it with a win. Of course you are, but you can't concede 3 goals away from home every game and expect to win more or less any of them. It's probably the only time all season where you can concede 3 away from home and win. And then if you look at the goals we did manage to score, they were quite a lot of fortune in that. Like one of Danny Ward's goals comes back when Sorba Thomas smashed. He controls it from nothing, from a shot, and then he has another shot, and it bounces straight back to Danny Ward, who's just prodded it in. And things like that go for you when you're on a great run of form. And then as we saw like last year, when the form turned, it's very difficult for those things to seemingly come your way. So, yeah, it's fantastic. And our away form is great. And there's a makeup in our team that I don't really understand. Like, you can watch the games and you don't really understand why we are getting these beneficial bounces and stuff like that. But then again, who cares? You just take the points and run off home. But then you're still left with that question of, are we a good team or are we benefiting from fortunate circumstances? And I think that's a dilemma for me anyway. We're looking at the way we play week in and week out. We seem so unpredictable in the way we dominate games. At the end of it, we still come out with a win. So yeah, you can say that's down to Carlos's tactical plan. And at the moment this season, it's been pretty bloody good. But again, can it continue? And there's still those lingering doubts for all of us. It's really, really strange for us to be in such a good position in the league, albeit with a goal difference not as good as everybody around us again, because that's the way Huddersfield Town do things. But it's just, I don't know. It's really, really strange. It's great to win, fantastic to win away from home, but gifting chances and goals away like we do could have been a different scoreline on another day. Danny Ward, though, has got to be the best positive. He's found such a rich vein of form. And again, it is through hard work and graft. But then when things just bounce your way, like they have been doing for him, even better, he's taking them all and putting them away. And I think his little question for you guys, he must surely have the gap between his last hat-trick and his most recent hat-trick this weekend for Town has to be surely the longest for any club by the same player gap without anyone scoring in the middle of it. What is it, 8 years? Is that what it is, guys? 7, 8 years, is it?
Since 2014, wasn't it?
Since he bagged against Watford. No one scored in the meantime. He's done about 3 clubs in the middle of it. Come back, and it must be the longest gap in football history, surely, between a hat-trick for the consecutive hat-tricks for one club by the same player. But from the game, so the best thing is we won and we're carrying on. But I can't look at it and think we're in a better position because of it, because some of the defending was horrific. And that's against a team that's struggling to find any sort of results. But just to be able to go away from... But it's just to be able to go away from home, guys. Like, it's great now. We're looking at games where we've got Reading away, and the expectation we all had before going into the game was so high. We expected to win that game. And now that's a change for us, isn't it? We've not seen that since David Wagner's season. We've not seen that since the promotion season last time. And we're all a bit nervous of suggesting something like that might be happening again. But again, underneath it all, everyone's like, oh, hang on. Are we going somewhere here? And when you can bag wins like that against, not the run of play, but when you get the benefit of dodgy bounces, you just start believing a little bit more, don't you?
But we have to caveat all of this, I think, with the fact that, in my opinion, this is probably the weakest championship I think I can ever remember. You know, the quality of the opposition, even the so-called big teams. There's nobody running away with the league. Fulham are bouncing again now, but Bournemouth have dropped away. I think in fairness to Carlos, I think that the shift this year from last year for me with him is that he's actually targeting games to win. I think before he was targeting games not to lose, and I think that's probably a change, which is why we went absolutely mental for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's why we went to 4 at the back rather than 3, because we probably did have one eye on. We can get at these.
Well, we might be able to get a win out. I think you have to credit the Reading manager, because what he did was he pushed Zhao and the other big fella, Puskás. He played him up against the fullbacks. So every time they went AWOL, there was a massive piece of grass from just to ping the ball into, and we didn't cope with it. So, I still think Carlos has got some way to go in terms of in-game management. But I'll give him his due. I think he's picking games to win now, and he's setting teams up to win those games. And credit where credit's due, that's happening. So you can't knock that.
I completely agree in terms of the standard of the championship. It is probably the poorest it's been for probably, 10, 12 years. So the standard has dropped. But I think it feels, I don't know about everybody else, but this feels very different to when we were sort of in this similar position last time in 2016, because the atmosphere around the club, which I know we'll come on to, feels very different. The team is very different. If it doesn't have the same personalities in it, and so therefore it's not really comparable. I mean, the talent that we had in the 2016 team compared to this team are miles apart. But what I do like about this side is that they're prepared to work their asses off to get us back into a position where if we do go 1-0 down, like you say, 2 years ago, we'd have probably lost that 4-1. But this time, they've come back from 1-0 down, and then they've carried on that momentum and got the lead. And we got pegged back because of the poor defending, but it wasn't from the lack of trying and effort. It was more poor positioning, or Reading getting the break. So I think we all have to give credit for the fact that the players are actually, putting 100% in now, where a year ago they weren't. But it does feel different to me. I'm not as excited about it, but I'm certainly pleased as a supporter in the position that we're in.
I think with the Championship, though, right, we're saying it's weaker. I think what's actually happened is with the arse dropping out of the transfer market over the summer, there's been a lack of movement, hasn't there, of players, especially for a fee. And the worst thing you can do in football is stagnate. We saw that in the second season in the Premier League. Your first season, you're motivated, you're trying to find out new things, you've got new players around you, everyone's trying to earn a spot. And then what happens over an extended period of time is any coach naturally picks his first 11 or his first 14 or first 16. And things become a little bit predictable, and mentally teams change. They've still got the same players with the same abilities, but the way the teams are made up changes when things stagnate. And I think in the Championship, the players are just as good as they always were, but players haven't moved the same. There's not as many new systems. There's fewer things for analysts and data dudes to look into and try to break things down that are new, because they've still got all the same players from last time. Now, we're used to seeing clubs bring in 6, 7 new players from all over the world that most of us have never seen before. We might have seen them on Football Manager and think they're great, or on Transfer Market and think, wow, they're worth 900,000, whatever. But when it actually comes down to how they play, we haven't got much of a clue. And that's the same for clubs. Obviously, they've got more data than we get, but they still haven't seen them against English players or players based in England, in England, in an English football league. Whereas I think this year has probably been the most predictable for the way teams will line up in the history of the Championship. So that to me explains why other teams have stagnated, are doing so much poorer, and it seems worse than it ever has been. But I think it's just due to the effect of COVID on players being able to, and clubs being able to shift players on. And this is where we find ourselves. And at the moment, we're taking advantage of it because we're bringing players up from a B team, which we'll get onto later again, I guess, which was the plan. We're bringing in new guys that we've already got in our system. And that has actually been a big advantage for us so far for me.
And then it's not just in the Championship, Ian, it's all across English football as a whole. You know, the teams that come down from the Premier League, I think will be the weakest that's ever come down. And the teams that come up from League One, they'll be the weakest teams that's ever come up from League One.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like I agree with you though, Steve. Like I don't feel it this season the same as I felt it before. So we're only about 6 points behind where we were under Wagner, which isn't too far off. But I think the league itself is a lot. You know, there's very fine margins. I could count probably between 7 to 10 points that we probably should have had, that we've been dominating in games and leading and actually thrown away. So if you add those on, we're sort of top 2, and you're thinking, oh God, you know. But I don't have that feeling what I had under Wagner, where right from the beginning of the season, I actually thought, you know, we've got something, we've got the players here, we've got something special, and we've got a chance of getting in the top 6. At no point this season have I thought that we are a top 6 side, and I don't know what it is, but you go to home games and there just isn't that same atmosphere, you know, whether it's due to what's going on maybe behind the scenes and it's all a bit disjointed, but there seems to be this tension there at home that there wasn't there before, that I don't know what it is. I mean, what do you guys think we are at the moment as a team? Do you think that we're sort of top 6 side? Are you happy where we are? Or because some people are saying, you know, I'm really excited we're going to be top 6. Some are just happy that we're not at the bottom. Because a lot of people predicted us to finish between sort of 18th and 22nd at the start of the season. You know, should we all be happy with where we are and just get behind the lads? But it just doesn't seem, there's just something not quite right, I sense. It's just not the same. And I can't put my finger on what it is, but I don't have that feeling as I did with the other team that we're going to make it to the top 6.
No, hearing what Nick, Steve, that people have been saying is, and I get the whole, you know, it doesn't feel like 2017 and the year went up and whatever, but weirdly, there's like this weird like novelty and freedom to support in town at the minute, because so much as it seems to be a mess. Like we had money, we don't have money. Like we've got these big players now, we don't have these big players. You know, we've been struggling, and somehow from somewhere we're on this unbeaten run. We find ourselves in the playoffs. Like we're only scoring from set pieces. We've got a 5 in the bank, but we just keep winning. And it's like on a Saturday, sometimes obviously I always want town to win. Sometimes you don't care. And I don't come away from a game if we've lost or drawn thinking, fuck, we've missed a chance here. Let's look and see how West Brom got on. Let's look at this. Like there's this weird relaxedness to this season, and somehow, there's the connection with the players isn't what it was last time, but I still feel like there's some connection to the players because this does seem like a decent team and a decent group, but granted, I don't think we'll finish in the top 6, and I don't if you looked at the table, I don't think we are one of the best 6 clubs. But on the other hand, I won't be surprised if we snuck in there and finished 5th. And there's just some weird freedom to this season. I don't know if it's because it's the first year back after not being in the ground for COVID for that season, and it's easier to have this freedom when we're winning games rather than losing games. But I don't know, I'm enjoying it for that sense. You used to carry results with you through the week sometimes, and you'd get pissed off and you'd be like, but you can forget the result at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, and you come back the next game and you're like, shit, we're still top 6, we're still not lost for 8 games. So I think
the biggest difference, Matt, the biggest difference, Matty, right, is last time with Wagner, right, we controlled games from start to finish, so it felt like we were in control no matter who we played. And now this year, it doesn't feel like that, does it, at all? You're watching it and you know it
can go a minute to score or concede. And that Blackpool game, we were 1-0 down after 1 minute and we were 1-1 after 3 minutes or whatever. And what's going on here? How can that happen? But
every game feels separate, doesn't it? Every game now feels like anything could happen within the game itself. Whereas when it was Wagner, you say, it felt like the overall season had a plan, and that we went we targeted games in. Definitely, we're going to sit back. We'll hit for a 1-0. When we got to 1-0, we could defend that all game long. And that year, there was no better team in English football that did that. Whereas this year, it feels like every single game, such a storyline that you can't look past it. So you're going to turn up, you're going to watch one good game, and you've got no idea what is going to happen. But that means, again, that you can't look forward to the end of the season just yet, because every single game itself is so crazy.
Yeah.
It backs into the whole ownership thing for me. I think, the Wagner revolution, the way that it was set up, the way that it was marketed, the way that David carried himself, what he thought, how he talked. And I think I debated this with Ferbs on Twitter. I think Carlos has a challenge. I think, his English is damn sight better than my Spanish. Probably not as good as Cam's Spanish, but certainly better than my Spanish. But his English is broken. He talks very quickly. I think he's quite a shy bloke. I actually think he's quite uncomfortable in the limelight, and that affects how he interacts with the fans. And I was saying to Ian the other day, it's noticeable that since Dean has been back in the building, Carlos spends more times now after games appreciating the fans. He makes a point of going to the South Stand after a game now. He came to the away fans at Reading on Saturday. Before that, he shook the hand of the opposing manager and was off down the tunnel. He wasn't interested in a longer conversation. So I think I don't feel the affinity with him, and I don't think that's his fault particularly. I think I like a lot of people, have grown a little cold to the club over the last couple of years. And I think I feel for the players, because actually I think there's some good people. The one thing Wagner used to do was not just recruit good footballers, but he recruited good people. People who had something about them, something that, they were good men. And I think, in fairness to some of these people we brought in, people like Matt Pearson and Tom Lees, they're good people. Lee Nichols, Danny Ward re-emerging, they're good men. So I think they probably don't get the credit they deserve. But it's that whole link for me. It's really hard to put your finger on one thing, but it's all linked to me. As for your question, Nick, are we going to be top 6? I doubt it. Sheffield United and Borough coming up on the outside rails like trains at the minute. Forest out far behind them. West Brom, I cannot see us finishing in the top 6. But I think we'll finish top 10, and I'll be delighted with that, because I had us down as relegation favourites before the season. Yeah. I really did.
I think from my point of view, I had us to. Well, I think we'll finish top 10. Don't think we'll finish in the playoffs, because, like say, Borough are there now, and Forest out far away, like you said, and then there's the outside chances of Coventry and such as well. But and I had us to finish like 16th, 17th at the beginning of the season, just because of the squad that we had. I mean, when we signed Matty Pearson and Tom Lees, I didn't look at it and think, oh wow, what a signing! I'm absolutely delighted that we signed them, because they were exciting signings. But what they have proved to be is solid individuals that cared about the club, which is interesting, really, because if you'd have asked, I think, fans from other clubs about such as Tom Lees, you would have maybe got a different answer. So I like the fact that they care. I like, obviously Johnny Ogg, I think, epitomises what we all want as supporters anyway. And really over the last 2 years, he's been sort of the glue that we've had to sort of stick with, because of the way the club's been run, and like I said, there's been that coldness there. And that's why I just think that the atmosphere, I think exactly what you said, Matt, about the atmosphere in terms of how it's portrayed as well. There isn't that link all through the club. And because of the changes that there's been made, so, Canal Side being more privatised, there are various, the club's gone through so much of a change that it just doesn't feel the same. But like I say, that's not down to individuals like Carlos, who unfortunately can't, at least he speaks better English than Bielsa does.
Well, let's talk about the ownership, guys, because I think this links in with sort of uncertainty and that kind of underlying unease sometimes. As Town fans, we need to see that stability at the club, and obviously we got the statement out from the club that not to panic when Phil's companies went to administration, and then Phil disappeared. Dino has taken over the reins, and then we hear this talk about potentially Marcus Evans coming in, some new investment. But shots fired between Dino and Phil on in program notes, on social media. It's all a bit chaotic. I'm just looking forward to the time when it's all sorted and we all know the direction we're heading in. Because at the moment, I don't know what we are. I don't know if we've got any money to spend in January. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know whether we're happy just to stay where we are, whether we want to push on, if we're just happy to stay up and just be a steady championship club. And I think once this sort of ownership situation sorted out and we get a better idea of where we're going to be heading, I think that will help translate to the atmosphere in the stands. And I think a lot of people will be more at rest, because the longer it kind of goes on in silence, the more rumours start to come out. Doesn't really help things too much. So what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, look,
you should go first here, Ian.
I'll go first. I had plenty of opinions on this, and I spoke pretty openly about it. And then we've gone into this season, and this is regarding the playing side of the ownership, not the financial side of it, but like their plans on what they wanted for the club, right? In regard to the B team model and stuff like that. And now going into this season, I was like Stephen, I thought we were going to get embarrassingly relegated. And now in a stronger championship season with more player movement, maybe we would have. But like I say, finances aside, if we look back now at what they've planned to do, it's actually worked really fucking well, really, really well. And that's hard for me to eat my own words here, but I am doing, because if you look at the players that were performing for us, they are players signed by Phil and Mark and Lee Bromby and Josh Marsh, I guess, to play in the system that we've actually wanted to implement. And we're now sat in the playoffs. Okay, we've played some extra games, but you can't argue that it's actually working so far. If we guess at how much money we expect to be going out on wages, we know we're not a big hitter in the league, right? So they wanted us to overperform by bringing in B team players fit for the system they wanted to play, cheaper guys who had stuff to prove, high resale value at the end. It's all pretty open knowledge. That's what we're trying, and it's working. It's absolutely working, 100%. You can't argue that. So Phil having left, on the playing side of it, we're in a far greater position than he was when he came in. And I never thought that would be the case. Okay, we're not heading for Europe or whatever the aim was initially. But then we can look at the financial side of it, and the other aspect I still find quite difficult to understand. For example, initially he did say we were going to be going for Europe and we were going to be challenging to get back into the Premier League and all this type of stuff. And then very quickly it did change to this B team model. It was quite clear that the financial expectations of the club weren't matching the FFP input of Dean Hoyle, which was spoken about initially. And we've all spoke about this before, but dropped again to a break-even self-sufficient model. Now that's a massive change that we've gone over many, many times before. I felt like it was missold how the club would be run when the new ownership came in. Didn't end up like that. But now if we just look at what we've got left, we're doing okay playing wise. But then financially, you've got to ask questions in regards to Dean suggesting that if he hadn't come in and put £2 million in more or less straight away, would have been in administration in a few days. So when you see stuff like that, how does a break-even model suddenly disintegrate into needing to put £2 million in October. Was it October? I think it was as well. It was such an early part of the season. And now I'm pretty sure TV money in the league normally comes in quite early, and parachute payments. I'm not entirely sure if it's spread over the course of the season. I don't believe it is. And if that is the case, and it's not spread over the course of the season, how are we in such big trouble in October when the season goes on for another 7, 8, 9 months? Like, I don't understand how that could have progressed to that when we're talking about being break even and being sensible with signings. And it does look like we're being sensible with signings. So then all these questions that remained in the background, I think everyone was aware of them. And I think that's why everyone feels a little bit less excited about how the season's going in regards to the league position, because everything else felt just a little bit off. But it's hard. It's hard to understand exactly where we're at when all we've got at the moment is an owner. I suppose Phil's still the owner. He still is the owner. He's just not running the day-to-day club at the moment. And Dean are taking pot shots at each other on in little sly little. I'd tell you what, I love to see it. I fucking love to see it. That's what I want. Have a big Barney. Call each other all sorts. Have a right good go at it. Get on Twitter and give someone some right abuse. It's nice, but and it's just hard to understand exactly what's going on because there's so much cloudy water, isn't there? It's difficult to understand what's going on, and I don't even know if we'll ever find out. But one thing I am certain on is one thing that Dean knows better than any other owner I've seen in the league is he understands town fans. And regardless of who's made what mistake, who's put the club in the position that it's in, where certain finances have gone with parachute payments and stuff, regardless of all that, Dean will get everybody back on side. He gets everyone back on side straight away, doesn't he? Straight away, we all like, yeah, all right, Dean, he's one of us. Yeah, he is. And I think that'll be a big boost. That'll be, to me, a bigger boost for Town's run to the end of the season than signing any player in January. Because all of a sudden, we're doing a podcast again. Because Dean Hall's back and we're a bit excited about how the club's being run again. And it's not just us. You can see it. You can just see it emanate, just fluttering, just flowing and building again across the social media spaces, because people are excited to support Town again. And it's because of the connection Dean has with the club and the people that he brings in to run it.
I'm not going to sit here and start slating Phil, because as you say, from a playing side, I don't think same as you, I didn't expect us to be in a better position. From the playing side, I think one thing we've all got to give credit to Phil for is getting the big earners out who didn't care, and sort of lowering the budgets and the wage demands and everything like that, and getting people in that did. I think the massive worrying scenario to me is that it all seemed to collapse within about 48 hours. His companies went into administration. Then we've got Dean paying October wages, like I said. Then we get programme notes saying I had to pay it in 2 days, otherwise we'd gone into admin. So I think that's the more worrying thing. And the financial side. The other thing is with Phil, you never really trusted him because of the information that he kept saying when he first came in. So therefore, I think Town fans didn't trust him, and I still don't think a lot of people, well, the majority don't. And that's why I think we're all a bit sceptical of the Marcus Evans interest, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about. But in regards to Dean, okay, mistakes have been making, as we well know, he wasn't necessarily the best at picking managers. But I think we all trust. We somehow have this psychological trust in Dean that because he's back, everything's going to be safe financially. He knows how to run the club because he's been there before. But what we aren't going to do is overspend and risk the whole club's history. And I think that's fair enough. But what I'd like to see now is, let's have a fans forum, or let's have an interview with Dean, or let's just have a bit more of a statement and maybe get everything out in the open and just give Dean the chance to say what he needs to say. And if Phil wants to do a similar thing, that's fine as well. But I think there needs to be total clarity, because at the end of the day, we are the supporters. We're the ones that deserve to have honesty spoken to us. It's our club, really. As they've both always said, they're only custodians. And therefore, I think that's why we need a bit of truth. But maybe not do it in the middle of this good run.
Yeah. I think there's obviously a lot of similarities into what I think and probably what a lot of people think, certainly around, you can never knock the way the club was ran in terms of its recruitment and probably streamlining it's wage bill and things like that. I think part of the problem, everyone seems to be you've either got to be Team Phil or Team Dean, and ultimately they could, well, from where I'm sat, they've both probably made mistakes. They've both done things I don't overly agree with, or think it's necessarily been done right. I think going back to what I said about the almost like a bit of novelty of following Town, when it was that Swansea game and you read those programme notes and you think, like, what the fuck's going on? I'm reading this only because the programme's free, and it turns out we almost went bust not long back. And you're like, how am I finding out that? What's this? Like, everything's just a bit of like you couldn't make it up, really. Like, I think that was a bit. I was surprised that's how that came out in the paper. That whole 2 million, in the programme, and then the whole paying October's wages was like just a sentence put into like the Examiner piece, and you think, it's just like what, like the club's like on the brink here, and we're finding out in bits and bats. I think there's an element of, I think Phil probably thinking once he had the club and the way that the deal was done, or we perceived it was done when he bought it, was we did have a half decent squad when we came down. If he could probably manage the money fairly safely in terms of cutting wages, and there's no reason why we can't be a top 30 club. And he's dropped on quite well the way it went. Obviously, hard luck for him in terms of COVID hitting and other stuff affecting his businesses, and he's having some like financial struggles in that respect, which, you know, hopefully something gets sorted out somewhere, I imagine, with the staff he took on and everything else. But they can't have this back and forth war of words from the odd programme note, the odd secret cryptic tweet or Instagram message or whatever. There just needs to be, I think, some sort of clarity. And you know full well if this Evans bloke takes on 65% and Dean takes on 35 or whatever, we're still probably only going to hear one side of a two-sided story, which we'll never find out. Like, we're never going to know. But it's not going to be an audience with Phil and Dean, and they're both going to tell us exactly what happened, because they've both got.
What they want to tell us, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us what they want to tell us. And,
just like they always do. And I think
exactly.
Yeah,
Dean's
stuff like getting rid
of
of Matt Devlin is Dean's played a good hand there, and moving on, and getting £5 tickets. I think what you said before, guys, about Carlos now probably engaging with the fans a little bit more. That can't be a coincidence, I don't think.
No.
And all that. So you can see that element coming into it. But like I said, it's because there's a very much people are picking a side for. I don't necessarily think it needs to be. It's him or him. But we just need some sort of communication. A bit like Steve said, we need some sort of clarity, because everyone bangs on about clubs are out without fans, and these two have probably said the same. But we're all sat here thinking, well, if I don't go to the game on Saturday and read a bit of paper that's getting given out for free, I'm not going to find out if we skint or not. So I guess we'll see what happens. Hopefully we go up and then we get loads of money again.
It would be like. Sorry, guys.
I was just going to say, I think we'll never know the truth. I mean, I'll be careful what I say, because Phil don't like being bad-mouthed, clearly, does he? So I don't want to end up in court, because despite the fact his businesses have gone bust, he's still got more money than I'll ever have, I'm sure of that. But, I said right at the very beginning, you can never trust a man that wears a double-breasted suit. Dean's cute, and people criticise Dean for selling the club to Phil in the first place. I think Dean knew exactly what he was doing. I think Dean knew exactly where he was placing it, and he still remained, even though he had 25% of the club. So, Dean's been cute. He's managed to get a big chunk of his debt repaid. No doubt, if you look at the deal that's being touted with Marcus Evans, Dean's somehow getting 10% more than he's got now. Whether you like it or not, Ipswich fans Brian on Twitter from Ipswich is telling me the bloke's a waste of space, but I do know he's worth 750 million quid. If he comes in and he's the man, then we'll be behind him whilst ever I've got a reason not to be. One thing I just want to pick up, Kill, when you talked about the B team and that being Phil's strategy, I think they stumbled into that. I sort of disagree with you. I'm not sure the B team's produced anything other than Sorba Thomas yet. I look at Scott I think the lad's struggling.
You can see a guy. I'm jumping in there, right? You can see he's a 20-year-old lad. He's playing centre midfield and he's playing most games, and we're in playoffs. I don't understand this Scott High bashing. The Scott High bashing. For centre midfielders, it takes a long time for them to mature, and to mature, they have to play games. And he's performing well. We've also got Josh Koroma as well that I'll chuck in there, guys. We've also got Koroma. So you've got 3 there. You've got how long can something go on before you don't say it's good luck, but well thought out? Because other than Jordan Rhodes, guys, sorry, Steve, other than Jordan Rhodes, I don't know what we've missed on. And Rolando Aaron, with his injuries, which were always an issue before he came in, which we spoke about in a previous podcast, guys. But when can you look back at it and think, well, no, actually, he's well thought out here. And maybe that's Lee Bromby and Josh Marsh. And again, I never thought I'd be sat here saying, oh, well done, guys. You've done such a good job. But to me, guys, I don't know. What more do you want? What more do you need, Gareth Kay, to be happy with a B team plan? Because I'm performing at the moment. It just sounds like a complaint for no reason. We're doing really well on the field.
The proof of the pudding is when we turn one into if we turn one into big cash, then that says it's success. We've filled some places. Koroma's blown hot and cold this season. Now, Sorba Thomas, let's be honest, Sorba Thomas was only in the team because people got injured. Sorba Thomas wouldn't be in the team. So, Carl's got lucky with that. But I take your point. The completion of the circle will be when we sell one for 18, 20 million quid.
And you counting Lewis O'Brien? Are you going to count O'Brien? Is in that? He's not really B team.
He's an academy. He's academy. That was before the B team, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he'll go. But
I agree with you, Ian. The Scott I thing, right? You also have to remember, he has been thrown into the position where, because Hogg's been injured, he has been asked to do that job, which, let's be honest, is not a job that many young footballers want to do, is it? Like, just be told to tackle and break up play. And so I think he's done quite well. You also have to remember, Gaz, that, for example, we've got Kane Harrott out on loan at Port Vale, who's done well so far there, and he's been scoring goals in the B team. You've got Critchlow, who's been out on loan at Plymouth and various other clubs, and he's had nothing but sparkling reports from people sending reports back to town from there. So I think, fair enough. You can point and you can say Josh Koroma being out on cold and that. But
some of them were here, Steve, before the B team started. Romney Critchlow was here when we had an academy.
Well, one of them I've just seen now. So Matty Daly just back for Bradford.
But it's progression, guys. You have to look at the progression
exactly that.
from the academy, from where they were in the academy to where they are now in the B team. They're playing far more football now at a higher level in the B team scenario than what they ever were in the academy. I mean, I remember watching Lewis O'Brien when the under-16s. When I was writing reports for the Examiner, and he was outclassing every player on the pitch. But when he moved into the B team, it gave him a bit more of a challenge, and that's why then he went out to Bradford, and therefore he's the player he is now. So I think you've got to look at the players and think, well, they're getting a much more round of better experience because of the type of players that they're playing with. They're playing with experienced players that are either out injured or suspended, and they're playing against men in other opponents.
I get that, Steve, but we can't use Lewis O'Brien. Went to Bradford and came back, was in the first team before we started having a B team program. So we can't really use. I get your point though, and I think you're right. That was why the B team structure should work. That we're getting these boys to play against men, because that's the challenge when you step from any academy or non-competitive football into a first team environment. It's boys against men. So I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I think on the whole they're all right. I mean, you'd never expect more than a few to actually make it through and sell for big money. I mentioned Sorba and the like. Scott, I'm going to kind of agree with Gaz. I don't know what he does. I don't know what his strengths are. Most games I don't notice him. He doesn't make many defence splitting passes. He doesn't make many last ditch tackles. He doesn't sort of control the play. I mean, he's only 20. I agree, but I'm not sure what he does really. I hope he comes good, but I think we do have some promising players. And they are starting to get more regular game time now, which is encouraging. I don't think we can rely on them, but it's nice to have, one or two coming in, slowly bedding in. rather than, the position that we were before, like having to rely on 50, these kids to fill 50% of the team, which is not a position that we really want to be in. Moving on to January transfer window, looking at, if we need to actually strengthen the team. Do we need to strengthen the team? There's not much time to go. We've obviously been pretty quiet. Nothing really much has happened. Talk by some of Josh Koroma potentially leaving. Where, if anywhere, do you think that we need to strengthen as a team in order to seal a top 6 spot, if that's what we're going for?
I think the biggest bit of business we'll obviously do is probably keeping hold of O'Brien, which obviously the closer it gets, the more likely it looks. But it only takes a decent offer on the table to make something happen there. I think, there's been links, hasn't there, today, last few days, around another keeper coming in. I think that's a fairly sensible approach to bring someone else in, because if Nichols was to get down with an injury or pick up however many yellow cards he needs to get a suspension, the backup at the minute is obviously just a couple of young kids. So there's an option. I think that's a safe bet. I know we've done it last year. We've done it before to bring in a more experienced reserve keeper, backup keeper. So, but I think if we get one in, probably a creative midfielder, which is always on the top of probably every team's list. Again, if O'Brien was to leave or get injured, we lack something there. Thankfully, we have been scoring a few more goals of late, and people like Holmes and Sinani are proving to be good players in the roles that they're getting asked to do, not being wide men, but being that sort of 10/winger/creative/second striker role. But I think a midfielder who can get some goals, get some assists, is what every team craves. But I think that's what, hopefully, we've probably got an eye on somewhere down the line. But for me, if no one went out and no one came in, I think I'd be fairly content with that.
What's the Koroma links, Nick? What I've not seen or heard that.
I heard potentially Bournemouth were looking at him. Who knows? You get
a couple of rumours about £2 million. I think the rumours were quoting.
Yeah, who knows if it's true or not? We've been rumoured with Patterson, haven't we? From
I'd let him go for that. I'd let Koroma go.
Oh, look, we can.
No, I'd keep hold of him.
You can look at Look where we're in the league this year, though. Hang on, look where we are in the league this year, yeah. And you look at our top goal scorer, Danny Ward's got 10 goals, and he's 7th top goal scorer in the league. I think 7th as of today, before the games kick off tonight on Tuesday. And that's no coincidence. You need a top goal scorer to be able to compete at the top of the league. That's what you need, right? And we're not at the top of the league, but we're challenging up there, yeah. Danny Ward's made of glass, or he has been previously. This year he seems a little bit more resilient, but I don't think any of us would have any confidence in our form continuing if Danny Ward did get injured and missed a few games. So everyone always says in January, "I'll go buy a striker, go buy a striker." But guys, when I asked before what signings didn't work, another one didn't work, and that was a Meepo loan from West Ham. That missed. That was a whiff, right? They happen. That's what happens with loans with young lads. That's exactly why young lads go out on loan. It's not necessarily a bad transfer by Town to bring him in to see if he could do it. Just didn't work, didn't fit our system, whatever. But now we're left with not very much behind Danny Ward if he does get injured. And now Dean Earl said, "Give me a problem." When he came back into control, didn't he? He said, "Give me a problem. Let's have a problem." And in January, if we're challenging, let's see. Give me a problem and a decision to make in regards to bringing new people in. Lewis O'Brien has to stay, right? If Lewis O'Brien leaves, our team's done. Because we can question how good Scott High is and what his game is or isn't. Lewis O'Brien's game is setting pace and tempo for the entire team. When he starts going, when his engine's running, we run. We run through him. Hoggy does a holding a little bit more, and that kind of similar work in the first third. And Lewis O'Brien transitions it throughout the final 2/3. That's what he's great at. Now, if Lewis O'Brien goes, I don't think you can bring in a midfielder like that because they're very, very rare. There's not many of them in the Championship, not with the money that we can afford to spend. So you've got to keep what we've got. And to me, it's just bringing that extra striker in case Danny Ward gets injured. But that's hard to do, innit? Like with Spurs for years after behind Harry Kane, they could never bring a second striker in because if you've got a guy scoring goals and you only play one striker, really, it's very difficult to try and entice somebody in. So it will be hard for us, again, to bring a proven striker in when we've got Danny Ward. So again, you're relying on, I'd guess, another loan from a Premier League club. But I think as a very minimum and realistic expectation, that's what we've got to be looking at. You've got to have another option in case Danny Ward gets injured, or if his form drops off again, as we saw last year, he couldn't score for anything. And all of a sudden this year, everything's going right from him, he's bagging for fun. But if that does stop, we stop. So I think that's got to be addressed if we really do want to continue trying to challenge at the top. If we're just happy avoiding relegation, building and progressing next year, then we don't need anything. We'll be fine, but we'll probably drop down the league a little bit when in regards to poorer results. But if you're looking for that problem, Dean, I think it's just a little bit of backup up top in case we need it.
I think the backup keeper, if he's cheap, Blackman, which is the lad we've been linked with, I don't think it's a bad signing if he's cheap. I personally have no confidence in Schofield. I think the lad's damaged. I think we did him by throwing him into the Wolves last year, and he was absolutely ripped. And I think he'll ever struggle to recover. I'm with you, Steve. I think I'd like to see some kind of centre midfielder come in. I'm never convinced by Sinani. I know he scored a few goals, but I don't really know what he adds. And Hoggy and Lewis, if one of those two goes out of the team, then we're in trouble. Russell's played a couple of games. I quite like the look of him. At least he's got some physicality about him. He's a big lad, so he brings something else to the team that we don't have. But you lose Hoggy or you lose Lewis O'Brien out of that team, and I'm with you, Killer. We're done. Lewis leads the press on every occasion, and without that energy and that drive, I think we'd be a completely different team. And striker, yeah, maybe. I mean, but we're now looking at Jordan Rhodes and Campbell, who haven't scored a goal yet this season, and we're nearly at the end of January, which I think sums it up. But honestly, I can't see anything. I can't see anybody come in, and unless we get mega bucks for Lewis O'Brien, I don't see anybody going either. I think it'll be exactly as you are come the shut of the transfer window.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that you're absolutely spot on both here about how important and integral Lewis is. I think, like I said before, if Bournemouth want to offer $2 million for Koroma, let him go. I don't think he's that important to us going forward. In terms of how the club want to progress, and he's one of the positions that you could probably fill with getting somebody just as good as him. I think the only one I sort of disagree with is, I understand what you're saying about Wardy and him scoring 10 goals, and you'd like somebody there to be back up, but that is what Jordan Rhodes is, isn't it? And the only thing that, well, one of the things that I'd say is that if we can get Thomas and Pippa or whoever it is on the other wing to do the crossing, he's gonna get in the box and score the goals. I think I've still got major confidence in him to do that. And to be fair to him, something that he didn't do before is he didn't really track back, and he didn't run, and he didn't do all the things that you want your all-round striker to do. But he has started to do that in the last, since he has returned from injury, and I still think he will be a valuable player. He just needs to get that first couple of goals, and then he'll be on a run. So I'm not as worried about up top. I'm more concerned about our stability within midfield and the more creative players, because sometimes if Lewis is having an off day, there isn't a lot of creativity in there, is there?
No, I think it'd be great to have a midfielder who can just dictate the play, like a Moy. Obviously, it wouldn't be Moy, but Swansea at home, second half, great example. Someone that can disrupt Swansea's play, just get on the ball and just try and take a bit of control back to us would be great. I think we need more goals from wide areas. I think it's no coincidence that you look at the start of the season and the gap between midfield and Danny Ward was about 10 mile. And now at least there's more players in the box, there's more people around him, he gets deflections, and a lot of his goals, he's not scoring 30-yarders all the time. A lot of them are tap-ins because there's more people around him. And I think, it'd be great if Koroma, it's one of them things where if he wants to go. If he doesn't want to go and he wants to work hard and get back to form, great, we'll keep him. But, only Koroma knows what he wants to do. But I don't want players here that don't want to be here. So if he don't want to be here, then he can go for me. But if he does go, then we need someone wide. wide left, but definitely need more goals from midfield because it's our goals ratio for midfield is pretty woeful, really, compared to other teams in the top six, certainly. So moving on, we've got two difficult games coming up. Stoke at home, followed by Derby at home. I think this Stoke game is going to be a real acid test for us. It's going to be a real barometer of where we are in terms of our top six aspirations, because win, it puts some good distance between us and Stoke, who have games in hand on us. Lose, and Stoke are breathing down our necks. Going to be a very tough game, though. Stoke, I mean, they've won 4 out the last 5 away. They've only conceded 1 goal. Like us in a way, that they seem to be better away than they are at home a lot of the time. So I think this is going to be a real tough game for us. But how do you see this, guys? Like, do you think we can hold on for the win? Do you think it's going to be cagey, similar to Swansea, where we try and get a goal up and then try and defend? Or do you think it's going to be all gun-ho, like at Reading?
Anyone that comes to watch Town now after the last couple of games are going to try and sit really deep. All of them's going to sit deep. They're not going to try and get into a shoot fest with us, regardless of how poor we are at the back. In times, if teams do come at us like they did at the weekend, if they do target behind the fullbacks, that's just not going to happen, is it? Everyone's going to look at us, especially when we're at home, and think, do you know what? We'll be happy with a point, and both teams would be. I think Stoke and Derby would both be happy to take a point. So we're going to have to find a way to break these teams down. We're going to have to find a way to overload and cause a little bit of chaos like we like to do early in games and try and hit the front early doors. But with us, guys, I don't understand how anyone can really do a really in-depth pre-match like analysis and expectations of games, because we're unpredictable at the moment. The way games go are just so crazy that it's nearly a waste of time even talking too much about it. But anything could happen, and you wouldn't be surprised, would you? You wouldn't be surprised to be again another 3-3 at half-time this week, and then a 0-0 the following. Anything can happen with the way we play at the moment. But I just don't think they're going to play big open games at the McGalf Smith Stadium. They're going to come and try and keep it really, really tight and try and frustrate us and get the fans on our back, like we try and do when we go away from home. You always want, let's keep it tight and get their own fans on their back. And we have expectations now. The players have to deal with the expectations that fans have going into so many home games in a row. And we have been an unpredictable kind of and a bit of a surprise package this year, haven't we? And that's transitioning. That's transitioning now into expectations on results. And like the Swansea game, we failed to deliver in that one, I think. And then we've got 2 more coming up. And it's questions we've not had to answer before, but we'll find out exactly, I think, of the makeup of the team and the mental side of it, and whether players think we can challenge in these next couple of games.
Well, I know a bit about both these teams because I've got lads who work for me who are big fans of both. And Stoke, the view is they'll come and they'll sit and then they'll play on the break. They've got some real pace. So they'll come and try and draw us out and get in behind. And let's be honest, that sometimes can be an Achilles for us. And I actually think the toughest game of the two will be Derby. Derby are really steeled in the adversity of their current situation. Tom Lawrence is a key. All of the Derby fans are sweating that Tom Lawrence will be the one that's picked off. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but Graham Shinney went to Wigan Athletic last week for 30,000 quid. I mean, what a signing he'd have been. I'd have had him in town 100%. So, I think the Stoke one will be a tough game, but as long as we can find a way to break them down early doors, I think we should be okay. But I think Derby will be a completely different nut to crack. I actually think they'll come and I think they'll bring the game to us. And I think Wayne Rooney has done an absolutely fabulous job there when you consider the pressure he's been under and what he's trying to work with. But if they lose Tom Lawrence before the 31st of January, that might completely change the dynamic. So, in our current form and the current way we're going, 2 winnable home games. If we took 4 points, I think I'd be happy.
Yep. Oh yeah, I'd definitely be taking 4 points. I think from these 2 home games coming up. I think, like Ian said, if there's inevitably being in the playoffs at the end of Jan, if the players fancy it, they've got to. We're going to find out from these 2 games if there is kind of if people can turn the you never know into like it's on here. Like something could happen this season. I'm similar, following Ian really. I won't be surprised if we got turned over 3-0 on Friday or won 3-0. There's that element of the way that the season's gone a little bit. I think because we're unbeaten in 8, we've got to go in there with this confidence. If we go a goal behind, I'm not going to switch off because I know we've got goals in us now and we can make something happen. It'd be interesting to see the team that we put out. It was a strong team against Reading, and it sounds like there's a good chance that Colwell and Holmes will both be available again this week. And Carlos has certainly Colwell has been on the team sheet straight away, and then that'll influence the formation, the structure that we set up. So it'll be interesting to see what we go with and what changes. But no, I'll go to these games with an air of excitement, not a huge amount of expectation, but thinking that we could easily come away with 6 points. I don't think I'd be shocked if we came away with 1. But there's a chance for these players now to really show that they want to get involved in this promotion fight. But I'll just go into them, an air of I'll hopefully enjoy it, see what the results bring. If we come away with 3 points, I don't think that's an unrealistic or an unhappy return to come away from these 2 home games.
Yeah, I'd love 6 points, but it's unrealistic. Well, it's not unrealistic, but it could happen. I agree with you guys that Derby will be the more difficult test because of what they've done there so far, and I agree. Wayne Rooney's done an unbelievable job. You wouldn't have thought he'd have turned out to be the sort of manager at a struggling club like Derby, what are at the moment, and be well in the trenches. Because obviously, with Everton sacking their manager, there was rumours that he might want to go there, but I think he's ready to fight for his job at Derby. Interestingly enough, I don't know if anybody else heard or read the article that sort of said that we could be the last team to play Derby because of the financial implications of what's going on at the moment. Don't know if anybody else read that. But I think as for Stoke, it'd be a difficult test, but I'd like to think that we could turn it into a victory, and I think they're sort of like sliding back down the league a little bit with the quality that they have. So we'll just see. Hope for 6 points. More realistic to get 4 though.
I've been more than happy with 4 points. I think Stoke, it's one of the teams that never seem to win against Stoke. Yeah. But listen, if we do manage to beat Stoke, get a draw against Derby, I'll be over the moon. But it could be out, couldn't it? You're right, guys. It could be. I wouldn't be surprised if we got 0 points or we got 6 points. But I think this is a true test of where we are, and if we have any real ambitions of getting in those playoffs, I would suggest that we would need at least probably 4 points from these games. But we'll wait and see. Anything else, gents, before we wrap up? No.
Just wondering whether we should have a bit of a ranking for the performance so far this season by Carlos and the town team.
Here he goes.
Why can I have 10 scored? Do you mean there, Gas?
Yeah. Well, if I went with 9 last time, I'm going to have to go above 10. I'm going to have to break my own ranking system here, aren't I?
Yeah, where were we last time when you said 9?
About 10. We were sniffing playoffs.
We're on the brink of the playoffs, I think, yeah.
It was, in fairness to Killer, it was 9 out of 10 for performances, not results, in fairness.
Oh, okay.
I can't believe I've just stuck up for you.
Yeah, because we only won 2 or 3 more games after that.
Yeah, I did fuck that up, didn't I? Really tarnished that season. So I'll do it again right now. We couldn't expect this. We couldn't expect to be as high flying as we are. And it really is high flying with the money we're putting out there. So I'm going 11 and a half out of 10 this year so far.
Absolutely. So exciting times, lads. Exciting times. Great to see us up there again. And I just hope that things get sorted off the pitch quickly for everyone's sake, and then we can all be pulling in the same direction. But it's great to be in the top 6. It's great to be back on the pod again. Thank you so much to Ian, Gaz, Stephen, and Matt for giving their opinions. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all again soon.